You're listening to the Light Novel Podcast. Visit us online at lightnovelpodcast.com. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Light Novel Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the J-Novel Club series, My Next Life as a Villainess. All routes lead to doom. Like I said, this one's out from J-Novel Club. They are actually doing a print release of this one. The first volume just recently came out in print. You can pick up the digital editions up to Volume 6. I think Volume 6 is on pre-order, and I think that catches them up with Japan. And currently this one is also airing an anime, which I know at least you can stream on Crunchyroll. I'm sure there's other places you can watch it as well. So we'll be talking about the first two volumes of the series, because I'm pretty sure that's pretty much what they're covering with the anime. I think there's some side story stuff they're throwing in there as well, but yeah, we'll be talking about that. So if you haven't read those first two volumes, or you haven't watched the anime right to its end, which I don't think is possible because I think they're only at episode 10 right now, yeah, there'll be spoilers. Just be aware. I am Justus Stone, and tonight I have with me Jean-Luc.
Good evening, and as they say, a bouquet of veggie a day keeps the doctor away.
Oh, Jesus. I have Kyle. I have Kyle.
Hola?
I was like, where's the Ola? We have Mirage.
Good morning.
And we have Terrence.
I'll greet you with my green thumb up.
All right, First off, we'll run through a couple of quick news bits. First off, just if you buy manga from my Anime List, their manga store is now carrying a whole whack ton of yen-on light novels. So you can pick up yen-on titles from them. Also, the main story of Strike the Blood is coming to an end in volume 22. Although I have read somewhere that apparently the author is going to keep doing some side stories and stuff like that, so you'll still have plenty of Strike the Blood to satisfy that itch. Reincarnated as a Sword. It's getting a new spin-off manga. Basically, Fran and teacher go into a dungeon and then find themselves, transported to another world. What the... An isekai that gets isekai'd. I mean, you know.
What's the spin-off part of that?
Oh, right?
Well, they already did that in Isekai Quartet.
Oh, well, there you go, right? So everybody, like, isekais get isekai'd, and then get isekai'd again. All right. In terms of new anime announcements, she professed herself pupil of the wise man. And it's an isekai light novel series that's getting a TV anime. Novel centers on Kagami Sakimori, a player of an MMO game where he plays as one of the world's 9 great sages, the stoic summoner Dunbolf. When he falls asleep playing the game one night, he awakens inside the game's world as his character, except he's now a really cute girl. So he decides to, instead of being that character, refer to himself as the pupil of that character, because gender bender. It's getting an anime. I don't know anything. I know nothing else about that series.
I remember covering it in the top 10 earlier, but I don't know anything else about this either.
Yeah, I did check a few chapters of the manga. Seems nice.
Oh, yeah. Well, we never know. We might just get it in English now that it's getting an anime. Who knows? And then, I'm just trying to blow through these. And then we've got a couple of announcements from J-Novel Club. Even though our last podcast was about, podcast so ago was all about J-Novel announcements and stuff, they had a couple more for us. First off, they had When the Clock Strikes Z, or Z, depending on what country you're in. This one is by Ichiro Sakaki, who, of course, has done Outbreak Company, Blue Steel Blasphemer, what is it? Wild Times with a Fake Princess, which was most recently announced by J-Novel Club. They've got a whole bunch of Sakaki titles. If only we could get Coffin Princess or Scrap Princess to
Yeah,
make Jane,
especially that one.
to make Jean-Luc happy. This one, when hardcore FPS enthusiast Duwa Hiroaki pulls off his VR headset and steps outside for the first time in ages, he realizes that the world is in ruins. Soon after, he coincidentally runs into horror junkie Judo Otaha, and the two of them team up to endure the zombie apocalypse. One fateful night, a VR AI known as Raven leaves them a cryptic message: survive, and humanity may flourish once again. Follow these ragtag oddballs as they cling to hope in a hopeless world. Apparently it's only got 2 volumes in Japan, and it's done. So if you're looking for a quick zombie light novel fix, check it out.
Yeah, kind of like fake princess. It's pretty low commitment.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. It's pretty low commitment. Absolutely. Then, from J-Novel Club, we have Monster Tamer. 1,000 Japanese high school students are suddenly thrust into an unfamiliar world rife with dangerous monsters. Their survival becomes dependent on those who awaken to unexplainable powers. Majima Takahiro, a normal second-year student, does not get any such power. Instead, he joins the majority of students building the homestead. But when a group of empowered students revolt, Takahiro is left wandering the forest on the verge of death. Having lost all faith in humanity, he finds salvation from an unlikely source: monsters. This one's got 16 books in Japan and is apparently still ongoing. If you want another like Ari Ferretta, screw humanity, I hate everybody, and people can't be trusted protagonist, this might be a title for you. Then we have finally from them the epic tale of the reincarnated prince Hersherik. Is it Hersherik? Hersherik? How would you pronounce that one?
No idea.
Okay, good. Yep. The life of Ryoko Hayakawa, a hardcore otaku, came to an abrupt end the day before her 35th birthday, before she was reincarnated as a beautiful prince in a fantasy world. However, her dream-like royal life didn't last long, as she soon uncovered the depths of politics and corruption of her kingdom. To protect the king and his people, Ryoko, reincarnated as Prince Hersherik, resolved to conquer the darkness within his country. The problem was, the prince had no physical strength or magical powers, and even his stunning looks were surpassed by every other member of the royal family. Still, the prince persevered, using the skills he acquired during his previous life, the experience of an office worker, Ryoko's drive for change, and her otaku brain. Otaku brains apparently are the saviors of all societies.
Oh, God.
I've read the prepub chapters out so far for those 3 series, and so far Hersherik, or the Reincarnated Prince, is my favorite of those. I have to say that his lacking strength is more or less due to him being 3 years old when the novel takes place.
Okay. He's a toddler. Excellent.
He's a toddler, yeah.
That would explain it.
I was going to say, that could explain quite a bit.
A bit funny to see them. He starts training, and right off the bat they say he has no talent for magic. Okay, that's something they might be able to determine, but he also has no special talent for sword craft, because that's something you can tell when you put a sword in the hands of a toddler. But so far I liked it. It's the story is okay, and the main character actually having to save the kingdom while 3 years old is also not so common.
Fair enough. This is true. And then just on the print front, they did announce that Other Side Picnicked and Seirei Gensuki are both going to be released in print, but they're doing omnibus volumes where they're going to have 2 volumes per print book. So if you liked either of those series and wanted them in print, it's a coming. All right, cool. So that's really it for the news. There's nothing else that is really striking. Somebody posted, apparently it looks like Yen On is going to be potentially announcing something.
Yeah,
Maybe?
I mean, soon. .tm.
Yes.
So, it could be this month, could be next month, could be, who knows?
Yeah, well, it's been a while since they've announced anything
Yeah.
significant. All they've done is announced like the books that they've already announced that they're actually releasing them.
Yeah, some Star Wars manga too. So, yeah, that to look forward to.
Because, I mean, no offense to anybody, but yeah, I can't say I run out to the store to buy Star Wars manga. Like really, all I do is watch The Mandalorian. All right, so my next life as a villainess, all routes lead to doom, or as we more affectionately call it, Bakarina. Because of course the main character is Katarina, and she's a bit of a baka. I don't know who coined that. I know the first time I heard that was Sam said that from J Novel Club, but I'm not sure if he took it from somebody else or what. But anyway, I thought it was cute, and it's so appropriate. Basically, an Isekai series about a girl who wakes up to her previous life's memories after striking her head as a child and realizing that she is indeed the villainous character in the otome game that she used to play, and that pretty much every route leads to her doom somehow. Either she's expelled from the kingdom or she's killed. And so the series is essentially, well, okay, the first 2 books, because they kind of actually end the game at the end of the second book. But anyway, the first 2 books are essentially about her trying to find a way to not end up in the bad route and to overcome all the awful things that could potentially befall her. But of course, the way that she goes about it is absolutely asinine and hilarious. And as, light novels are wont to do, because she is such a goofball, all the people that supposedly will hate her actually fall madly in love with her. And they all lived happily ever after. That's the end of the podcast. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye. All right. So, you know what? I have to admit, I read the first volume quite some time ago, and I just finished the second one today. And then I watched the first couple of episodes of the anime, which are cover the first book. I guess the first 3 episodes. They condensed the whole first book into 3 episodes. Felt a little... It didn't feel as badly rushed as I thought it would. But... Except for, the last... But I remember even in the book, it was like, you finished one chapter, then all of a sudden it was like, and then 6 years later, I was 15. And you're like, the fuck?
But if you're honest, then a third of the first book was repeats.
Yes. Yeah. That... Yeah. And that
but
was...
It didn't feel to me as repetitive. Yes, it was a repeat, but it's from other point of view, so you have a bit more deepness into some of the characters. Well, in some of the side characters, so they don't feel as left out.
But that's not really something you can reproduce in the anime.
Well, I think I mean, because they do the same thing in the second book, but it's pared down a lot. In the first book, when they do it from the opposite point of view, they pretty much run through the whole damn scene again, even including all the dialogue, and all you're really getting is a couple of thoughts from the other character's point of view, which admittedly is interesting and I liked, but it was a little heavy in the second volume, I found what they did was they included some of the dialogue just to give you context of where it was happening, because I found when they did those repeats, what they did was they included a lot more like backstory. So you actually found like I found out like I was like learning a lot more about a character as opposed to just replaying the exact same thing over and over again. I don't know if you guys found that, but
Yeah, well, it's true that the second book has more has more like backstory, especially when you get from the maid point of view, and then the school president point of view.
yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that you didn't know, but still in the first one, what I found interesting, even if there was like overlapping stuff, is that it's how they felt when they met her. I think that's really important in the character development overall.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think that was why initially it didn't bother me as much in the first volume, because, you know, seeing, like, I think part of the thing is that, you know, yes, okay, it's majorly an anime light novel / manga trope that the goofy character, everybody just falls in love with them, but I think that you're right that when you saw events from their point of view, you realized just how damaged they were, and that dealing with this girl who was so straight ahead, straightforward, and just kind of like blurted out what was on her, you know, on her mind and everything else, how that was so different from their experience of nobility and playing games and everything else, that I think it did go a little bit further to explain just why they had those feelings for her.
I mean, it's not that I dislike those segments. They might have been a bit too long, but I think they did have their justification. But it's just not something you can do in the anime, so it's not really fair to blame the anime to have rushed through volume 1 in 3 episodes.
Yeah. Well, no, and like I said, I didn't think it was as rushed as what I expected it would be.
Well, also maybe because like I didn't read it all in one sitting. Like I separated my readings, so maybe that's why it felt not as repetitive as maybe someone would just goes through it in one sitting would find.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the first volume's very episodic, right? Like, I mean, each story is very kind of self-contained. It's introducing you to a new member of her harem. We might as well call them all harem, because let's face it, they're all part of Katarina's harem, whether they be guy or girl.
It's basically one character per chapter.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I think Volume 2 maybe does a better job of, like, focusing on these solo characters, too, where you kind of get, you know, Maria developed, and then obviously the other character that comes in later, Sirius. Whereas Volume 1 was like, here's one character. Okay, you've met them. Here's another character. Okay, meet them. You know, it wasn't like, let's do, you know, whole arcs on these characters.
Yeah.
Well, but Volume 1 had to introduce 7 characters, and Volume 2 had only 2 new characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like
true.
Even Volume 2, I would say, I don't know, yeah, it's been a bit since I've read it, but I felt like even the old characters didn't really get like full-on like major new material. It was just those 2 focus characters for the most part. Like, I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but the first volume is very much just like little vignettes with these characters, and then they do, you know, come together, of course. But
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, particularly, I think the character of Alan gets almost completely forgotten in the second book. Like, he makes a couple snarky comments here and there, but like he basically does nothing for the whole book.
And you could almost say the same for Nicole. He gets
well-
largely forgotten.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
he
Nicole.
does.
Yeah,
Nicole doesn't
he
talk
does.
at all most of the time.
but Nicole, it's part of his character.
Well, that's true. Like, I mean, it's true. Like you do. It's almost like the second volume, the cast was too big. You know, like at that point, it was kind of like, well, there's too many people involved in this. And I mean, yes, like the second volume, obviously dealing with her going off to school, the whole protagonist of the otome game is obviously going to have to be like a major character in that story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Maria, she ends up getting a lot of focus in volume 2. And then I would argue, you know, we're not going to cover it tonight, but volume 3, I would argue, she almost gets kind of Allened or nickeled in that one, in my opinion.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So she has her
Dang.
her moment to shine, and I'm sure she will later too. But
And then just get back into the background. You're not needed anymore. There's no more. You're just another harem member now.
Well, it's understandable because in volume 2 that she's the main focus of Katerina, because Maria is the one she's paying attention to. She's the one that Maria is looking at to avoid her doom flags. So it's more or less a given that she'd be the main secondary character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in volume 2, because of the structure of it, it has a lot more of a connected narrative throughout the book, as opposed to volume 1, where, like you said, it's really just these vignettes of her meeting all of these different people. Which I mean, I still like. I thought volume 1 was still like really enjoyable, but yeah, it's definitely one of those books that you can pick up, read a chapter, have a good laugh, and then put down for like a day or two, and then come back to. There were a couple points in volume 2 where I was like, I really just want to keep reading because I want to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, definitely the intrigue starts on volume 2 because, you know, volume 1's the childhood and all the introductions and then all the introductions again. And so, I mean, I think it does help build the cast, especially considering some of the other mediums, you know, the anime, the mangas, they skip the other perspectives entirely.
Yeah.
So it is good to go in and actually see, you know, where Gerard's head's at, Keith, and all the others.
Yeah, I was super glad though that they included the axe scene in the anime. That with her opening the door for Keith. That was like one of my favorite parts in that first book.
That was the part that I was looking for the most when I checked out the first few episodes. Like, I really wanted to see that scene where she just like axe down the door.
Yeah, that was great. Oh my god, I laughed so hard when I read that in the book. Like you know, it was kind of weird though. I found like the second book now, obviously the second book because it is the honest to God where the death flags all come up. I found it pretty funny for the first bit, but man, it gets a little dark towards the end there. Like the last the last second last chapter or so was a little more darker than I kind of expected, given this series to that point.
That's probably the same for us all, because it is a real drastic shift in tone.
yeah, it was tough to be like after everything that went on, and obviously, you know, I feel for Raphael too, but it was tough after he had kidnapped, you know, we'll get into it later, but after he had kidnapped one of them and basically put them in a room like by themselves, you know, locked up, I think for days. Like, it was tough to like be like, okay, now he's one of the good guys. Now he's on our harem. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit of a tonal shift.
At the same time, like I think that some of them are aware by the end that he was manipulated, so that in his interior, like he's a kind person, like Katarina says all the time. It's just that he was controlled by something else that made him act in an evil way.
Well, I mean, the whole I mean, that whole bit, I mean, really, like, book 2 is what we should really be focusing on, probably, because I mean, that's the meat of the story, right? Like, let's face it. Like I said, volume 1, it's all sorts of just funny stuff. It's all stuff like, you know, Katarina being a goofball and like eating too much food, then needing to go to the washroom, and on the way to the washroom, oh, she meets a new character. Everybody bullies that character, but she doesn't, so they fall in love with her at the end, you know, like, like really,
You
I
just
mean, that
summarized
happens.
half of the chapters of the first volume. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's exactly how she meets Sophia. It's how she meets Marie. You know, like and that is like, and then she meets Nicole through Sophia, so that's taken care of. Geord meets her, like, you know, and then she falls and cracks her head. like, like, I mean, really, it either has to do with her not acting like a lady, tripping and cracking her head, or climbing trees, or it has to have her running to the bathroom and then stopping a girl from being bullied while she's at the bathroom. Like, you know, that's pretty much the first book. And all these people that, you know, are all broken individuals and, you know, are bullied and have bad skills in dealing with other people, they all fall in love like that, you know.
What's super funny is that, like, she does exactly what the main character is supposed. Well, the main character, or like an important character in the case of Alan, like,
Yeah.
no, in the case of Mary, like, it's Alan that's supposed to, like, change
Say that-
Marie, and like it's Maria that's supposed to change Alan, but now Katarina, just by being herself, she just changed everyone without knowing it, like 5 years prior.
She's like a bull in a she's like a bull let loose in a china shop. Like, you know what I mean? Like she just blazes ahead without thinking. It's funny to me, like, in a lot of ways, like, and this is where the character is so, like, I'm reading the whole book and I'm like, man, I love these. I love this book. Like, it's just so charming in so many ways. And it's just because Katarina is one of those main characters that in any other book, I might find her annoying as hell. And yet for some reason, she's just absolutely adorable. Like, and I think it is just because she is just so honest. And yet you've got this whole thing where she's got the whole, like, thing in her head, the whole Katarina's in her head to talk about strategy and all this, and yet she acts without thinking all the time.
I love when they come up with a strategy and she's like, "Yep, this is gonna work," and then the narrator is like, "Oh no! If there was only one other person on this board who is not Katarina, they would have told her this plan has no chance of working."
like, I mean, come on! Like, to prevent my death, I am going to throw a fake snake at the prince. Come on!
I think the funniest line too was when she was like, "All right, I know what we got to do. We got to push Keith down a long flight of stairs," and then like one of the Katarinas steps in and is like, "Whoa, calm down there."
Well, the thing is, I think from a lot of like harem protagonists or stuff like that, like it's actually one, or I cannot think of other one. Maybe there are, but like I think it's the only character for me that I actually find charming, like, and interesting. Like the other are just like bland slate, but this one, like, you really get it. Like when the other character talks about her, you get it why they are attracted to her. Like, it's not just for the sake of the plot.
No, I see what you're saying, and yeah, I do agree. Like I said, I think it's because of that earnestness. It's because of that honesty, and I mean, even the characters say that in the book, right? Is that she's so clueless and honest and decent and innocent in a lot of ways. Like that's why Keith has to keep protecting her from Geord. Aside from, he just wants to keep her for himself, but that's a whole other thing. I do love how they managed to get the whole Brocon thing into this and but it doesn't feel too creepy. I don't know,
Well,
I don't
because
think Keith and Jordo have a broken relationship.
Well, no. I mean, her, the whole sister-brother incest thing.
Ah,
Which I
no.
know they're not blood related from the very beginning. They make that obvious, but still, I thought it was funny.
Well, they're like third or fourth cousins, but it's not that close.
It's not as creepy as others have been.
Nothing major, but there's a small joke in a later volume where basically they talk about a little bit about he's got a little bit of a head start on everybody else at home, and he also they don't do anything too nefarious in private, but he does do some stuff in private that people are like, huh, you did that with Katarina? So there is a bit of that going on later, but it's nothing too nefarious.
Okay. Well, as long as it's not too nefarious. I don't think it could be nefarious because Katarina just wouldn't get it.
No. Yeah, she's so unguarded sometimes, and it can really catch her.
Not sometime,
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Like that whole bug bite thing when he gives her the hickey in the friggin' first book.
Yeah.
At her birthday party. And he's like, what's that on your neck? Oh, it was a bug bite, because that's what Keith said when he raped her neck. He's like, oh, you bug bit you.
It's her own neck. She doesn't even notice.
Right? She's like, huh?
Yeah, and I feel like if this were a different series, it was kind of what you were talking about earlier, Justus, where I feel like if this were a different series, certain romantic series, when a character is this dense, you get frustrated and angry. But I don't know what it is about this one that, in general, it doesn't seem like. It seems like maybe just because she's so lighthearted that you don't get frustrated and angry, that she doesn't pick up on all these hints.
Well, I think it's also because I think it's also because all the characters are in on it. You know what I mean? All the characters in her harem know that everybody else is competition, but they also all know that she is completely clueless. You know what I mean? And nobody, and even though even though yes, to the reader it's pretty obvious what's going on, it's not like in a lot of harems where you have the clueless protagonist, it's almost always the dude who's clueless. And I mean, you literally have girls throwing themselves half naked at the guy, and he's like, I don't know why she's acting so strange today. And you're like, what?
I mean, look at it from this perspective. In Katarina's defense, if everybody treats her that way, how is she to know that it's anything special?
Well, I mean, and let's remember, unlike a lot of harems where it's just the main character hooks up with a ton of girls or whatever. This is a situation where she assumes that she is the villain and nobody is supposed to love her. I think that's the other reason why this kind of works, is because throughout the whole thing, it's because she's convinced that they can't love her because that's not the role that she fills. Right?
Yeah,
She's like, all I can do is be if I can be friends with them. She even says that at the end of the second book, where she's like, "Oh, I got the friend ending."
Yeah,
Right?
she's desperately searching to learn who Maria is in love with, and when she gets to know from Maria that Maria doesn't love anyone, like any of the guys. Like she doesn't understand at all. But
Yeah.
like it kind of, she's convinced that her reality is supposed to follow the game, but she's not even aware that she changed everything from 8 years old.
Yes. Well, and that's it. Exactly. Like, well, and because even in the second book, like, she says how many events happen, even though so much has changed, there are still events happening, right? Like Maria being bullied at the bench, but she realizes, oh, actually in the game, that was Keith who saved her, not me. The
She
whole
steals
thing.
the spotlight of everyone.
Stealing a whole line from Alan.
Yes, all the time. That's half the fun in the book, I find, is like her realizing that she stole something, right? And like, I love that. That is like, that played out so well in the anime. That scene from the first book where Maria's like, "Oh, he came to my rose garden and he was complimenting me on it," and then she's like. And Katarina's like, "Oh, did he mention your green thumb?" And she's like, "Oh, I told him all about it." And she's like, "I'm sorry, Keith Sama, you'll never be able to do that." Or Alan.
And I like
She's
how
like, I'm sorry, you'll never have a chance to give her that compliment ever.
I like how at first she was like so confident that he would come up with something better. But no, that was not the case.
Like I said, I think that's maybe why the character is endearing and why she doesn't come off as grating, even though in a lot of other stories she would, because she's honestly so wrapped up in her head that no matter how much I've changed, because there's still that stuff that's far away. Like in the first book she's a kid and it's like the actual game doesn't happen for 8 years, so she's like, how do I know I've actually done it? So she doesn't realize that all this stuff that she's changed, and it isn't until the very end of that book where she's like, oh yeah, I got the friend ending.
Yeah, but even then, she's not sure.
Right? She's like, well, I guess technically in an otome game this would be a bad ending, but I'll take it. I also loved how. But I love how she's also, and I think maybe this is the other reason, is because she's also clueless about the relationships between everybody else too. Mm-hmm. Like how she talks all the time about how like Keith and Georg are like such good friends and they're always smiling and talking to each other, and it's like that they're actually like spitting venom at each other in a civil way, but she's like, they're such good friends, and look at them smiling at each other and talking and getting along. It's so nice. And you're like, girl,
Yeah, like everyone is ignoring me, but they're fighting over you. That's not the same thing.
Right, exactly. Like, and like I said, it's because she's clueless about frickin' everything, I think, is one of the reasons why she's likable, because she is dense. Like,
And
there's no,
also, like in a lot of isekai, when like people get hit by a truck, like you always wonder like why that person in particular. But in that one, like it explains so much. Like it's actually Katerina that was speeding on a bike that didn't look on both sides that got hit by a truck. Like it's her own damn fault. So.
Yeah. And she,
like
and she was so worn out because she had been playing the otome game all night the night before.
Yes. Yes. And again, like, but I think that's the one thing about like when you read volume 2, because of course, and this is something I want to talk to you guys about, because volume 2 gives us that little look into her life before she died in our world. Mm-hmm. And you realize she was the same clueless monkey climbing a tree girl in Japan as she is in the game. So it's like, it's not even like really that she's that different.
Yeah, well, that's what reincarnation means.
Yeah, right? Like, yeah. But then that was that whole thing too. Like, how did you guys feel about that whole bit where Sophia is revealed to actually be her friend Achan.
I'm not
So-
sure if it
From
comes up in later volumes, but for volume 2 I found it was a bit unnecessary.
so does it play out more in the later volumes? Like, is it more important later on?
I haven't read volume 2.
Oh, just in volume.
Yeah, not particularly, but
okay.
there are like these shadows of the person that was, her friend back in Japan, because she, Sophia never recovers her entire memory, and so you don't get any Katarina level revelations that this is all a game or anything, but there are these shadows of someone who was very dear to her in the private life, and so you do get to see the friendship rekindled in a way.
I was just going to say, I was honestly worried when they did introduce this, because I was like, okay, so Sophia is her friend from her school. Is it going to be like every character that's here is like someone else from reality? And it's like, she's not really, I mean, she is, obviously taking into account that Sophia's not all there, but or the Achan's not all there in Sophia, but just the idea that she's not really conquering these real people from this game. She's conquering their persona, but it's still her friends or family or whatever. I thought that was going to happen, but it does not seem like that's the case, or at least they haven't gone full bore on this, and I kind of hope they don't, But yeah, that was my worry, was that it was just going to become this whole thing like, oh, it's really all just her friends and her family from reality. But no, I don't think it'll go that way.
Well, what I was thinking is that, like, when I finished the first volume, I went to check like the first 3 episodes of the anime, and in the opening, you see like 2 Japanese schoolgirls on the side of the beach.
Yeah.
Like, so I thought, okay, like maybe Achan is going to be like somewhere in the second book, and I thought she was going to be Maria.
Yeah. And see, that I think that's my biggest problem with it. I mean, like, okay, it makes sense because obviously the relationship that she has with Sophia is the closest to the relationship she had with Achan, because they both have that shared love of books and everything else. And I think they added that into the anime. I don't remember them actually saying it in the book, but where like Katarina's like, oh, if we were in modern day Japan, then like Sophia would totally be into manga and anime, and so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's in volume 1 of the book.
Oh, did she say that? I couldn't remember whether she said that specifically. Okay. In any case, so that part makes sense to me, but I was kind of like, it seems weird that you've been together for 8 years and this is just starting to happen. Now, I mean, I think they probably could have played it out a little better, like, it's because they're at the school now and everything else, but it doesn't happen like that. Like, it just is all of a sudden like, oh, by the way, I'm reincarnated here with you. I don't know. I don't know.
What I did find interesting was the actual backstory of Achan, like how Katana changed her and how she lived her death. So that was super interesting.
Yeah. The one thing that I was sitting there wondering, I'm like, so what happened to Achan?
Well, from the book, it says that, it's as if she was praying that she would see her eventually when this life ends. So she probably just lived super old and then
Yeah.
died of
Well, that's
of
what I'd
old
like to
age.
think. That's what I'd like to think.
And especially in the second book when when Katarina meets Achan in her dreams, like she says that she feels more mature than she used to be when she was with her at school. So it's as if she really aged all the way to her end. And after that, she got reincarnated in Sophia, but only like she only remembers in her dreams.
Should we be wondering about like what exactly Katarina and Achan are for these characters? Like how exactly they got here and like what the force is that's keeping them in these consciousness? Like should we? I don't know. You know, it's not that deep, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the author thought about it that much because if you check, like Katarina, Sofia, and like Raphael, if you check like
Yeah.
those three, they all have a different interaction with having another soul or another memory inside of them. So it acts like three completely different set of rules. So I don't think the author really thought that much about
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
the
I was
reason
wondering.
why they're there.
I mean, that's a question I pondered for the first 2 or 3 reincarnation isekais that I read, but they never got anywhere, so I stopped asking myself that question. I mean, there's a few exceptions like Log Horizon, where they try to answer that question. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how far they are
Yeah.
with that question in the light novel. The anime, they were just about to get close-ish to an answer when it stopped. But in most reincarnation isekais, that's not a topic that's ever being broached.
Yeah. Like, if you just think about it, it's just kind of bizarre that they find themselves in, like, a video game that they played. Like, did God create the video game in reality? Like, if we really wanted to get wild with it, like, did God create the game cart? Did God realize I need to give this girl a happy life? So I'll make a simulation of the game world. Like, I'll make an entire universe for her. Like, so yeah, it could get really wild. Like, if you want it to.
Yeah, okay, the exception are all those isekais where the characters directly meet God. Then there is an explanation at the very beginning, but in all other cases, you won't, in all likelihood, get an explanation ever.
Yeah, well, there's a light novel series put out by Cross Infinite World called Obsessions of an Otome Gamer. And I haven't read the second volume yet, and I really should because I actually really liked the first volume. It was one of the few ones where it was the same thing, like the girl was reincarnated into an Otome game. But it heavily implied that there was like some kind of malevolent force involved with her and why she was in that world. Like, it was one of the few ones that it wasn't like she met God. It was like something had actually put her there. And it was a little, I don't want to ruin anything, but it was a little more twisted even than that. Like, it actually extended beyond just her. So, but yeah, you're right though. Like, Terrence, like it doesn't. I mean, again, like I don't think we're supposed to think too much about that kind of thing because the author clearly. I mean, like again, this whole thing with Achan, like the author really doesn't set out any strict guidelines about why it is that these two girls have been super close for 8 years, but only now does suddenly this reincarnated soul come forward, right? Like nothing happens to Sophia in
It's
the
not
book.
really any important story-wise either, so the story would not have changed if she just left it out.
well, they could have come up, yeah, they could have easily come up with a way for her to get out of that dream world that didn't involve Achan.
It does very much feel like they just didn't want us to have bad vibes about, Achan was left behind. So this kind of puts her back into the world of the story and makes you feel a little bit better. And then, of course, maybe, it'll end up working thematically and story-wise, too.
The only thing that bugged me a bit is the fact that Sophia and Achan seem like two separate beings, as opposed to like Katarina that just awakened to her memories. But at the same time, it kind of feel like Katarina the Japanese Katarina just not crash, but overwrote the old Katarina's personality.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, that was one of the things that I kind of wondered about, with Ascendance of a Bookworm, the same thing, right? What the hell happened to the person that was there before?
Yeah, in Ascendance of a Bookworm, we more or less have an explanation. She died.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't gone that far, obviously, so don't ruin it for me.
That's not true. That's in Volume 1.
I did read Volume 1. I have an idea, but it was never explicitly stated.
Okay,
Even
sorry,
in
I'm
the
not sure
anime, it's
in part
explained.
1. I'm not sure in which part of Volume 1. In which
Oh, yeah, I only read part 1 of Volume 1, so... But, I kind of, again, I'd have to reread the first volume of this. I read the first volume some time ago, then I watched the anime today to refresh my memory about most of it. But, I kind of got the feeling that it wasn't so much that she was replaced. It was just that when she had all those memories brought back, it changed her opinion about how she should behave.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of sometimes you're right. Isekais, when you have them sometimes, it feels like the person from Japan is overwriting whoever was there before. But I think in the other case that you have, and I think that sort of meets this, is that you have basically people are made up of their experiences and of their knowledge. And so when you insert all those experiences and knowledge into a person, you do kind of change who they are. Yeah. It gives them a new set of rules to work on.
There's basically 3 different kinds a character can be reincarnated. Either, let's say 4. Either they're given a brand new body, like in Konosuba.
Right.
Or they are reincarnated from birth.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen all too often. And then they can either overwrite the character, like in Tanya, or...
Tanya, she's born.
I think in the novel she regains consciousness as a baby, but after she's born.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
she's already in the orphanage.
Yeah, because she comes to her senses as she's being fed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's arguable, but did the infant have there's not really I don't think it's as much as overwritten as just something awakens.
Yeah, maybe not really important to the point.
Yeah.
And the last version is then they just regain their memories at one point, like in Baccarina or in Deathbound Duke's Daughter.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't, it doesn't. I don't think necessarily that it's a matter of her being overwritten. I just think that it's a matter of because of who she is.
No, in Baccarina, it's definitely not being overwritten.
No, yeah. And even when you take a look at Baccarina, even if you take a look, when it starts off before she falls and she's being a brat, even then it's not you don't get the idea that she's exactly not a dense individual. you know, I think it just made her aware to not be so cruel and not be so
probably.
selfish. And you know, it's, and I think too, as I said, I think it kind of comes into that whole argument of nature, nurture, and everything else, right? But definitely, like, that was the one thing about those flashbacks to Japan, and even her relationship with Achan. I kind of felt like that was setting up that whole idea that it was like, you know what, even in Japan, this is who she was, right? This isn't something new just because she got into this world and she's like, oh, suddenly I have to be nice and straightforward and stuff, and so I don't like death flag. It's actually like, no, that's exactly who she is.
Yeah. And who she is, if I recall correctly, who she is, like, helps her oppose, like, dark magic. Like, I think if you have, like, a strong, like, mind and, like, a good personality, you can't be manipulated by it.
I think the way they explained it in the novel was that dark magic only inflates or expands on negative emotions that are already there, and if she doesn't have them, there's nothing to expand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's not so much that he can't influence her; it's just that she doesn't hold grudges, and she doesn't envy people, and you know, she's her feelings towards her friends are genuine. Is basically what it boils down to. And which, I mean, this is the character that we know, right? Like, we know that she's that way. She's this straight ahead, straight laced character. I one of the things I kind of liked about this book too, like, I mean, I don't know how it goes later on, but you know, we often, a lot of light novels, you do have a lot of negativity about, like, lesbian gay relationships and stuff like that, or, you know, characters reacting very negatively to the idea of, oh my god, I'm a guy and he's a guy, and you know, and like, I never really get that sense in this.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like all the other characters, like the guy characters, never once questioned that the girls aren't really rivals because girls can't be together. Like, they legit see the girls as a rival for Katarina.
Yeah. Like,
Especially
they
Marie.
respect them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like, you know, and I think even at one point Katarina wonders if the two guys might to get together. I can't, maybe it was Keith and Jared, or I can't remember.
Yeah, probably. Like, it's the only two person that she could think of getting together.
She does also talk a lot about Nickel being a heartbreaker for both guys and girls.
Yes.
The alluring prince. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
That's true.
Yeah, and like, and even Katarina talks about how you know, Maria, she's like, you know, when she looks at her, sometimes she's kind of like, ooh, my heart's like, I kind of liked how, you know, this book was like, yes, literally anybody could be ending up with Katarina. There's no holds barred. You know, it doesn't matter whether what sex they are, what gender they are, or anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everybody's fair game.
There was one small thing I wanted to mention, and I think it happens in Mary's chapter when she's being, you know, called like a rival or whatever for Alan's attention. He like challenges her and is like, "You're seducing her." She does say, now, granted, she's only 9 years old at the time, but she's like, "I don't swing that way." She does say that. At least at that moment. And I've seen some people say... Yeah, I've seen some people say it could be, you know, her being flustered or whatever, so she's, you know, just coming up with an answer on the spot. I mean, you can read into it how you want, but at that moment, she might not have feelings for another girl. But I guess we'll see what happens going forward.
Well, but like I said, it never, like, other than that, one moment, I mean, in two books, you know, I don't sincerely get the feeling that she's as against it.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, though, I think that's the other thing, is that Katarina is really and maybe this is why she's not as annoying, Katarina is a very asexual character. Like, you don't, like, even though she talks about, like, she'll equally talk about how Maria's smile and everything else affects her as she'll talk about how Nichols' smile affects her, you know? But she never, throughout the book, is like, you never get the feeling like she's actually fallen in love with anyone. You don't even know if she's capable, like, it almost isn't even put forward like it's something she's going to do, you know? Like, she just seems so dedicated to her own life and her friends and everything else that it really doesn't seem like she's even into that, really.
Yeah, her dream is sitting on the porch with a cat in her lap. That's her dream. That's her ending.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, she already has a fiance, but she doesn't even think anything of it.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, I think that's the thing is, like, you know, in a lot of other harems with the clueless harem protagonists, they are still sexual, right? Like, there's still definitely the idea that they would hook up if they weren't so stupid.
Yeah, they nosebleed and everything.
Yeah, exactly. But Katarina's just like, there's nothing. Like, she is not, like, you go through this whole book, and honestly, I cannot see at the end of book 2 Katarina be with any of these characters.
I just feel like it's probably going to end with, like, maybe she'll realize they like her, and then that would be the ending. Like, that would be it. Like, I do have a tough time imagining, unless it's Jord, I have a tough time imagining, like, her falling in love with everybody and having this moment at the end where they're all getting married. But I mean, I guess we'll see what happens.
Like, yeah, I get the feeling that the ending will probably be her just running away as far as she could and everybody just chasing her.
Yes.
I think that's the ending that's going to happen.
Kyle, okay, because you're about my age. Betty Hill. Do you remember? Okay,
God.
Mirage gets it. That's the ending. The whole town chasing after her as she runs away. Oh shit! I totally see that now.
But personally, the way it's going right now, I'm not sure if this is going to have an ending, because the story ends after volume 2. The story, it is more or less a perfect ending for the story, and then it just goes right on afterwards. And I haven't read anything beyond that, but it felt to me it's going to be just more of the same. Either that, or they're introducing a new harem member each volume, which would be even worse. So,
Well, volume 2 was the canonical ending to the web novel.
yeah.
And apparently it was so popular once it got published that they wanted to continue.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but that's never a good reason to continue something.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, maybe the author liked money. I don't know.
Yeah.
That might have something to do with it. Yeah, so after volume 2, it does kind of have like a restart where, you know, everything, all the wheels just start rolling again.
Well, even
And
just taking a look
it's-
at the blurbs, it doesn't really look like the series really gets back to a new arc until volume 6. Because, like, that's where it mentions that, like, there's a sequel to the game. No, I mean, I don't know anything.
That's
Like,
Yeah.
interesting.
so I don't want to spoil anything. This is just the blurbs you can read on Amazon.
That's literally all
But-
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like basically, like, even reading Sean Gaffney's reviews of the later volumes, like, it seems like really I think they said volume 3 just seems like a big rehash of volume 2 in a way. Volume 4 is short stories that are set during the different timeline, which I think is what they're using. I think they're using some of that material for the anime. And then volume 5, I think, is like a throwaway book. Like, I don't mean that it's no good. I just mean it's not like, It's still kind of in that transition phase where the author's trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do
Yeah.
with this.
I'm still not sure how a sequel to that book would even work, because any sequel of that game would, by definition, not have Katerina in it.
Well, I mean,
Because
this
in
is
the game,
thing, like,
she either died or was banished in this game, no matter what route.
Yeah, but not if it's like Alan or Nicole's route.
oh, but wait, she said she never did the friend route, did she?
I'm not sure the
Like, I-
original game
She
even had
never
any friend
did
she
route.
never did the
Nicole's
harem.
route.
She
Yeah.
never did the harem route. She never did the serious route. She didn't do any of that. So
She didn't do Nicole's route either.
so I
So
had
technically, there could be
Yeah.
routes where she's not dead or expelled.
I had a theory. I had a theory that she hadn't done the harem route. So I thought that the harem route was she finds out they find Sirius or whatever, take him down, and they find out that he was manipulating Katerina with his dark magic. Like, that was my theory, and it got blown up. It did get blown to smithereens, because it did turn out that Sirius was the fifth harem member. That he was like the extra character. So it did get blown to smithereens, but yeah, I had that theory that maybe she was more involved in the harem ending.
Like, I was just going to say, like, because we do know in, she said in Alan's route, nothing really happened to Katerina because the main competition was Marie against the protagonist. So nothing happens to Katerina in that route. That's why she's like, oh, we can be friends with Marie. It's not a big deal because she's kind of like us. Right? And it's the same thing with Nicole. She said that route, Katerina didn't really play a role in it, that it was between Maria and Sophia. So there are routes in the game where Katerina really doesn't play much of a role whatsoever.
And even if she gets banished, I mean, she could come back
She's not
for a
dead.
sequel.
Yeah. That, you know what? Okay, now this is just me theorizing because I haven't read ahead. But that could be where the author could actually make use of Achan being with Sophia, because Achan might have played the sequel. Do you see where I'm going with this? So then Katerina finds herself in the new game, and she's like, I've never played it. I don't know what the hell's going on. And Achan's like, I know some of it because I don't remember all of it because I'm not like a full reincarnation. I could see that kind of playing out. I don't know whether that's actually what happens.
But even if it does, it's probably not the author's intention for introducing Atsuko as a character, as a reincarnated character in Volume 2, because they definitely didn't plan that far ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really think that the only reason that Achan was introduced in that book was just to try and connect the character that Katerina that we know in the book is not that much different than who she was
But
in
they
the other world.
probably could have done this flashback with just having Katarina have a dream of her previous life instead of introducing Atsuko.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Oh yeah, it wasn't necessary. I don't know what the author's plan was for that. Especially like when you're saying that, you know, the web novel basically ended with the end of Volume 2, which clearly it basically did, because I mean that's where the end of the game was supposed to be. So
it's like the last chapter, well, before the Jord short story, it really says the end.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not. It'll be interesting to see how successful the series is now that it's sort of like going into an actual new arc, as opposed to some filler volumes. Because again, right? Like we all know. Like, let's take a look at it. Sword Art Online. I mean, he finished basically the main story in one book and then had to bounce around how long until he got his groove back. And it's arguable whether he ever did. Okay, it's fine, but I'm just saying. I think we can all agree that Alicization is still a better arc than Fairy Dance. I think.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not really sure about that.
Well, like
They
I
are
said,
both
it's
kind
arc.
of bad.
I thought Gun Gale was better than Fairy Dance, but that's
Definitely.
Yep.
But that's just because, like, I have a thing for Shion, so whatever. I'm biased. I'll admit it.
Gun
all
Gale
right.
had a pretty good story behind it.
Yeah, but this is not the Gun Gale online podcast. So. But it is definitely. I can see where this is one of those series where if you love it, certainly I can see where you might want to keep reading on. But the end of that second book is kind of like the end. I kind of feel like that short story they put at the end is to tease you to try and see if you can keep going. You know what I mean? Like, because if it ended just at the end, like, I don't think I'd have any need to read more. Like, it just ends and you're like, everybody's happy. Who does she end up with?
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't even care. like it's one of that I find is one of the funniest parts. Like, did you guys see online where I don't know what website it is, but that posted like the most popular pairings
Each week. And
Yes.
she's like all of them.
Yeah, and like she held like at one point like 6 of the 10.
7.
Like it was basically like Katarina and everybody was on that top 10 list.
But that's kind of a Bodie McBoatface phenomenon. So in 1 week she had 3 spots, and then everybody found it funny and voted just for Katarina pairings. So in the next week they were all in there. That's just the internet being the internet.
Well, I mean, we could say that, or we could say that because every week introduced a new character, then more people were invested in the newer characters. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is that they tend to go up and down based on whoever the focus character apparently is for the week.
Agreed. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I just thought it was really. But I just, again, to me, it just seems like, when you talk about the pairing and the waifu or husband foo or whatever they call them. Anyway, it always seems like there's usually at least a favorite, or of the group of harems are usually at least 4 or 5 people, that there's usually top 2, right?
Yes.
But again, honestly, like, I could see Katarina with any of these characters and I'd be like, well, okay, maybe not Alan, because like, who the heck was that dude? Like, he was just like, he was nowhere in volume 2, dude. Like where are you, Alan? You're just there to throw out a non-tsundere line and like nobody cares. Sorry, buddy.
Hey, he plays a good violin.
Well, okay, fair enough. But like, he did nothing. I was like, wow, poor Alan. Like, your whole damage in the first book was that you felt like you were second fiddle to Chiard, and now in the second book you totally are.
To be honest, there's not really any way for it to be any different, because he is so laid back and shy that the more outgoing characters like Jordo and Keith and Mary, they won't let him have a place in the story.
Oh no, I do agree, but like I said, it was just kind of funny to me. I was like, nobody's voting for Katarina and Alan. It's just not.
I mean, even Mary, who's arguably the most assertive of the harem, even she finds it hard to have alone time with Katarina. So there's no way Alan would have a chance.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Well, and they make it pretty obvious that Marie has done everything she can to manipulate it so that Alan's not around.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's like a chemistry class. Like, you cannot put two dense people together. It doesn't work. Like, it's not like oil and water. Like, don't try.
All right, well, fair enough, fair enough. But, okay, but aside from Alan, I mean, I could pretty much see Katerina with any of her suitors. And, yeah, I don't, like I said, I think that's why it works, is because she's dense completely across the board, even when it comes to how the other characters are relating to each other, and because she just seems to be completely asexual, that she just doesn't really care about that. Like, she's more invested in the relationships of everybody else working out than she is in having a relationship herself.
Personally, I think the most likely would be Jodo. Jodo is, first of all, light novel rule. First person is most often, or is very often, the one who makes the race in the end. Then he's the one who's already betrothed to her,
Yes.
and he's the prince, so he has the most status of all of them. So basically, Jodo, if he really put his mind to it,
Yeah,
then
like,
he
I
would
see
make
the
the
most,
race.
but at the same time, like, I really pity the guy. Like, poor him.
Well, I mean, you know, it, but at the same time, he says, like, he thought life was so boring and everything else, and there's this girl that's like this natural disaster that's just so entertaining. You know, you can never be bored.
Yeah, but really, Jodo is he has the self assurance to actually come out and say that he loves her if it really if ever there's really any danger of her falling for somebody else.
Well, and that's even something that he says in that short story at the end of volume 2, right? Is that with Keith, he's like, so Keith should have a head start on me because he lives with her, but because even Keith is naive and kind of awkward in his own way, I'm still ahead. Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, part of me just kind of wants to see her run away with Maria, but, you know, that's just... I don't know. I kind of like Maria. Anyway. I kind of love how even, like, outside of just relationships, like, with these main characters, I like how she even managed to fix the relationship between Maria and her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Like just, you know, it just by her sheer force of will of, like, being such a good friend, kind of making the mom go, like, yeah, I should stop being so wrapped up in myself and get over it.
I kind of wish Maria would maybe help her and her mom, you know, reconnect a little bit better to some extent.
Well,
That's a lost cause.
but I don't really think that they have a bad relationship. I just think that, like, you know, for all the reasons that Katerina is enjoyable as hell to Giordo, it's the thorn in her mother's ass. You know what I mean? Like, you know, she's sitting here, like, her daughter's basically betrothed to become royalty, and yet she's climbing trees and stuff. Like, I can see where, you know, you'd get a little worked up.
I do still love when she passed out the first time she saw her in gardening overalls.
Well, and when she learns that there's a garden at school,
Oh yeah,
that was hilarious.
I know. And then Keith has to try and convince her it's flowers. It's okay. It's flowers. Even though we know it's not flowers, it doesn't matter.
Like,
Yeah.
she's dressed as a peasant and her mother.
Yeah.
Like, we'll talk about your costume later.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a supposed rumored garden.
Yeah. Yeah. I like you love how her mom prioritizes, right? It's like, okay, you're dressed like a commoner. we're not even really going to worry about that. I'm more concerned about this particular rumor.
And like, well, at the end, like when they give a bouquet of flower to Nicole,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm gonna do different than everyone else.
I'm going to give him a bouquet of vegetables. Yes.
She's always so proud of herself. I mean, you can't feel you gotta feel happy for her.
But you know what, though? But again, right? Like, even though everybody's kind of like, the fuck? But, like, everybody knows that her heart's totally in the right place. And so they're like, you know, I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I like sometimes... Like, I think that's kind of the thing with Katarina that I find her so adorable is because she is like that. Like, she's so confident and she's so, like, just puts herself out there, but she's not stupid, you know? Like, she's dense, but she's not stupid. Like, even her ability to notice that, you know, to read the room with, like, Sirius, and she's kind of like, you know, you're hurting inside, like I can see it, right? I don't know. I just think that she's such a fun character. Even if the later books are not really as good, I think I would still be tempted to read them just because I like the characters so much. Just to see them screw around and do stupid crap, and see Katarina keep making completely wild assumptions that have nothing to do with reality.
I think like one of the things that I think works in that book, and I think it's like the same thing that I really like about some other books, like Devil is a Part-Timer, is the actual chemistry between the characters. Even when there's not a lot of stuff going on, like this chemistry keeps you entertained and keeps the, well, not the story going, but like keeps your entertainment going, even though like there's nothing really important going on story wise.
I agree. Yeah, like, well, I mean, most of the parts that I probably laughed at the most were just inane little things that would happen. I mean, they really did nothing for the plot, but it was just funny. Like, it was just funny because the characters are just ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, you know, and most of the time it was because she did something and everybody was just kind of like shaking their heads and they're like, oh my.
But as funny as it is, if you have already had 2 volumes of that more or less had a plot, to read 3 more volumes of funny little vignettes like this before the plot continues, I'm not sure I would want to do that.
I might give it a try. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I like, I'm a little leery of the descriptions that I've read about Volume 3 from some reviews, but Volume 4 being short stories set like during that period, I think I would probably be okay with. Because it's the same thing, like you could just read a story and then put it down and come back to it later. Like it's not like an investment of massive time that you have to give to it. Plus, if I get a couple good laughs, I mean, you know.
I think it's Terrence that said last time, get book 3, read the last 20 page.
Yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed Volume 3. Like, I'd still recommend it, but it definitely has its repetitiveness. And I don't remember who was talking about, but yeah, I agree that you could definitely read like the last few pages of it, but it wasn't. I didn't mention that last time.
I don't remember who, but someone did mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of ground retread, and you know, sad to say, some volumes might be able to be just completely skipped altogether until the plot gets going again. So, unfortunate, but I'm still looking forward to when it does.
Yeah. Well, volume 6 is not out yet. Is that right?
Yeah,
Or
I
is it-
believe 5 was the most recent.
Yeah, I think 6 is coming.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So, and that's where, like, just...
June 28th.
Sorry, say that?
June
28th?
28th is the release date for Volume 6.
Okay. Because that sounds like where there's, like, actual plot truly kicking off. So, it'll be interesting to see, I think... it will be interesting to see when Volume 6 comes out, if the author tries to write, like, a bigger plot, more than, like, a 2-volume arc or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, to see how big that arc is. That'll be interesting to see. See how the author tries to extend this thing out. So, all right. Cool. All right. Well, it's been about an hour and a half, so I think we have talked at length about Macarena and why it is at least worth checking out, definitely the first 2 volumes. And the anime, I would say, is a very good adaptation for what I have seen so far. Probably one of the better, especially like recently in terms of light novel adaptations, I would say it's probably one of the better ones. So definitely that's worth a check out too. I know I had some good chuckles just watching the first 3 volumes, 3 episodes that retread volume 1. There was like some good laughs there. So
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how much filler they actually put in. Because there's a few stories. Yeah, there's a few just short stories that they do adapt into the animation, but then there's a lot of stuff that, wasn't in, the book or the mangas.
I mean, it was 2 episodes so far, I think, that were filler. They had 2 full, 12 episodes probably, and just 2 volumes, there's bound to be filler.
Well, they skipped so much from volume 1. I
They
thought they
skipped
could
the
have
repeats.
stretched. They could have stretched it out, and some of the, even in volume 2, some of the other perspective stuff. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting that they skip some.
How's other perspective stuff going to work in the anime? That's just not going to work.
yeah, I mean, I admittedly, I think you're right. Like, I think that if you eliminate those alternative perspectives, you're going to definitely... And yes, I don't think that Volume 1, in terms of an anime, suffered all that badly for them eliminating those things. But I think that's because in anime, we're not in we're not in Katarina's head, right? Like, I mean, obviously they do the little council thing, but like when you're reading the book, it's first person, so you only get really her perspective. So it's not like you can see the facial expressions of the other characters without her interpretation of what they mean. So, like, when you watch it in an anime, the body language that they draw the characters with, this facial expressions and everything else, makes it a lot more obvious what that character is thinking than watching it from Katarina's very warped perspective that we get in a first person in a book. So, you're right. Like, I don't think that was as necessary to do those alternate points of view. I think it did help in the book. Yes, it was sometimes monotonous, but I do think it helped sort of give you a better insight as to why these people actually liked her, as opposed to just writing her off as being a dense idiot. So, yeah, definitely there's that. All right, so in any case, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. To the listeners, thank you for listening. We're still working out what we're going to do next. I believe we're taking a look at doing one of the continuations, like a second follow-up to either Infinite Dendrogram, Realist Hero, or Faraway Paladin. I'm not sure which one we're going to do, but we'll discuss it and figure it out and we'll see you next time. Until then, thanks for listening. Bye-bye for now. For show notes and related links, visit lightnovelpodcast.com.